This is Jerry Silva with Fats Grill and Sugar House. You are listening to I Am Salt Lake Podcast. Enjoy.
All right, let's do this. What's up, Salt Lake City? Welcome to episode 35 of the I Am Salt Lake Podcast. I'm the host. I'm Chris Hollifield. I am your guide from episode to episode as I lead you on that journey through our beautiful city, introducing you to individuals, professionals, musicians, bands, just everyday people that's making the city what it is today. Thank you very much for joining in. Thank you to those of you that have been around since the beginning and your support and your feedback. You guys are what keeps me going, so I cannot thank you enough. If this is your first time joining me on my podcast, you can find us online at iamsaltlake.com. It's going to connect you with all the previous episodes where you can download them. You can stream them right online. You can connect with us on iTunes and Stitcher Radio. So check out the website and drop me an email on the Contact Me button up top. We also have a voicemail line that I love to hear back from my listeners, 385-202-5926. Give me a call. Tell me what you think of that podcast. I love your feedback. That's what keeps me going. And who knows, I might play it even on a future episode of the podcast. Before I go any further, I just want to let you know this episode was helped made possible by our friends over at Audible, audible.com. They have hundreds of thousands of audiobooks that you can download onto your MP3 player, your iPhone, your Android, your whatever MP3 player that you listen to podcasts. You can listen to audiobooks as well. And thanks to Audible and as well as my podcast, we have a free audiobook waiting for you to download. Just go to audibletrial.com/IamSaltLake, claim your free audiobook as well as a 30-day free trial to check them out. I don't know about you guys, but I run out of podcasts and I kick it on over to Overdrive in audiobooks. So check it out. audibletrial.com/IamSaltLake to claim your free audiobook. So thanks a lot for joining me today on episode 35. I sat down with Ricky Vigil over at the Slug Magazine headquarters. He's a contributing editor over there. He's worked with Slug Magazine for many years. In the conversation, I kind of found out how he got involved with Slug Magazine, as well as just different things about Ricky Vigil in general. So join me on that conversation. Go over to iamsaltlake.com/episode 35 and you're going to get all the show notes about this episode, as well as any links to get in touch with his projects and Slug Magazine, and just anything and everything you need to know. So thank you very much for joining me for episode 35 of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. I'm going to jump right into that conversation that I had with Ricky Vigil over at the Sorry Clementine shop after hours. Pretty much for people that aren't familiar with you, and what exactly is your role at Slug, and how did you get involved with that, and what do you do? I mean, I know that's kind of off to a big start right from the beginning for the listeners, but go ahead and tell them what you do over at Slug.
Okay, well, I am Ricky Vigil, as you said. I'm the contributing editor at Slug. Basically, that means that I help set up a lot of the stories that go in the magazine every month. I help edit articles and give feedback to writers, and basically just get the stories from the idea stage to the point where they can be published and put in the issue. And I mean, we have 3 other people on our editorial team, but I'm one of them, and that is what I do there. And I have been with Slug. I started as an intern in 2006, actually. I just answered a classified ad they had for interns, and I'd been reading Slug for a long time, and I always wanted to write reviews for Slug, and I'm like, oh, awesome, this is a good way just to get my foot in the door. And so I did, and I was an intern for a couple years, and in that time I also wrote. And I just kind of stayed there and stayed in the office and became familiar with the office. And when a position on the editorial team became available in 2009, I was offered a job. And I have been working with Slug as part of the editorial team since then.
Wow, so you've been with Slug for about 7 years now.
Yeah, about 6 years. It was the end of 2006 that I started.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, did you go to school or anything that helped?
Yeah.
Get in there, or what?
In a way, I think it did. I mean, I went to the U of U. I studied English. I've always really liked writing. I've always, for some reason, been really drawn to magazines. Like, when I was a kid, I used to love reading, like, video game magazines and, like, basketball magazines, but I was always into that. But yeah, I studied English. I was always into writing. And since I liked writing, it kind of just helped make me comfortable at Slug and it gave me the skill set that I use to, help edit articles and help give writers feedback. I mean, there's a lot of stuff I didn't know how to do, but yeah, you just kind of learn as you go at Slug, which is a really cool approach that we have there.
Yeah, I'm sure. Now, how many people are involved with Slug? I mean, I'm sure there's even people that you might not even be aware of, but like volunteers or staff. I mean, how many people are
so
part
we
of the
have
Slug team?
8 people who work in the office, and that ranges from our editorial team, our marketing manager, our publisher, and then our lead designer also works in the office. Oh, and our distro manager does. But apart from them, we have, I'm not even sure of the exact number. We have, I want to say, about 130 volunteers spread out across as writers, photographers, what else, marketing people, just everything that Slug does, photographers, videographers, all kinds of people, all kinds of cool people around Salt Lake.
Well, yeah, I would imagine if they work with Slug, they'd have to be
yeah.
somewhat cool, right?
Yeah, they have to take a written test to prove their coolness before we hire them.
They have to take the cool meter and like you see in the. Anyways.
Yeah, not really true.
Yeah.
Just to be fair.
Yeah, no, I was trying to think of something witty. I mean, what do you think the most rewarding thing for yourself has been with working with, being part of the Slug team?
Honestly, it's just been learning more about Salt Lake. Like, I grew up on the west side in the suburbs just until I was 18 when I moved downtown, and I read Slug here and there in high school. One of my high school English teachers actually recommended it to me. So I read Slug. I was aware of it. I picked it up like at Hot Topic, which is, where I think a lot of people actually first became aware of Slug. That's how, like, a lot of my friends and a lot of the people that I grew up with became aware of it. But, the thing that I really like most about Slug is that not only through reading it did I become aware of cool stuff going on in Salt Lake, but now that I'm in the office, I work with people who help put that cool stuff on or who are friends with people who put that cool stuff on. And it's just awesome. I mean, that's kind of the whole reason that Slug exists, is to make people aware of this culture in Salt Lake that people might not know about. And I mean, that's kind of what you're doing here with this podcast.
Exactly. And that's, I mean, kind of back to where you were saying, learning about Salt Lake by doing this. I mean, I still try to take pictures and stuff. I mean, I'm not a professional photographer by any means, but getting out and being part of it, you learn about so much of what's going on. You're like, wow, I didn't know that business was there. I didn't know that place was there. Or this band existed, or so many people have lived here their whole lives. And speaking of that, I know we kind of chatted before. You grew up in Salt Lake area, more or less.
in the Salt Lake Valley, Kearns, West Valley, Magna, that kind of area. Okay. So I've been here forever.
So you're not like I talked to some people, including myself. I mean, I grew up in Southern California. Family moved here in my late teens and whatnot. But I mean, you're born and raised here, and so we kind of talked about the most rewarding thing of being with Slug. What do you think the most challenging thing of working with Slug or being part of doing work with Slug?
Well, I mean, it can be a stressful job. I mean, especially since we're a monthly magazine, we have a deadline, obviously. Certain stuff needs to be done at a certain time. And that's still a skill that I try to get better every month, every time that something new comes up. And I mean, sometimes things go really, really smooth. Like right now, we are so close to being done with our February issue. We're recording this in early January. I don't know when this is going to air, but
I'm not sure exactly.
Someday.
But yeah.
But anyway, I mean, like sometimes we are so far ahead, and then sometimes something super last minute will pop up. Maybe a cool event pops up that we weren't aware of before that just got planned, or well,
that's even with this podcast, kind of like you said, you're not sure when it's like I try to so there's no gaps in post. I try to keep the interviews up and going, and then all of a sudden somebody will be like, oh, I got this, I want to get out, kind of like you were saying,
definitely.
And so you want to get it up.
And that'll happen. Or like, I mean, you can only control so much. Maybe a writer's late on deadline, or maybe someone who's supposed to be interviewed has suddenly gone out of town and is not talking to anyone. So I mean, there's a lot of factors that you can't really control working a job like being on the editorial team at Slug. But I mean, it's also a skill to kind of cope with unexpected stuff like that. And it kind of has helped me, like, just in other aspects, just to kind of take stock of my situation, see what I can do about it, and then kind of move forward the best that I can given the situation I'm in. So, you know.
No, I got you. And I've probably it's been big learning with doing this podcast. Now, Slug, I mean, Slug is print magazine. It's it's online.
Yeah.
And then you guys have a podcast as well now.
Yeah.
Is there any other things that it's part or that I'm missing there, or is that those are the three formats pretty much?
Yeah, those are the three formats where we publish editorial content. We also have the Slug Games, which is our winter sports series that we put on every year. The first one's in January and the second one's in March. And then we also do Summer of Death, the skate contest in the summer. And we also, Craft Lake City began as a Slug entity. Now they're separate, but they're still pretty closely connected. So those are kind of more the events that Slug puts on. But yeah, in terms of content created, the magazine, the website, and the podcast. Slugmag.com is our website. Sound Waves for the Underground is our podcast.
Yeah, and I'll put all those links for all three of those on the website, IamSaltLake.com website.
Awesome.
That way people can find out about them. I'm curious the most. Part of me is it's even upsetting to have to talk about it, but print. I mean, is print? Would you say that's going out? Would you say a lot of people look more online? Even the podcast. Would you say a lot of people read Slug as they used to, or how? I mean, I don't know if that question makes sense.
It totally does. I mean, as a general trend, kind of throughout the publishing world, print is going away. We have been really lucky at Slug in that we have not really faced a lot of the problems that a lot of bigger publications or publications that exist elsewhere have, because we're kind of a very niche publication. I've talked to a few different people, like I was at a concert a few months ago. This band I interviewed a few months ago, actually, called Andrew Jackson Jihad. They were reading over Slug and kind of talking about it, saying there wasn't really anything else like it. And then this guy named Aaron, who does publicity for Discord Records out of Washington, D.C., he grew up in Salt Lake. He came into the office over the holiday break, since we'd been talking over email, and was just telling us that it's kind of a unique publication, and that it kind of, in a lot of ways, is fueled by the culture that surrounds it, in the sense that our advertisers are people who grew up reading Slug. That's how they found out about cool things, and then they started their own business. Now they advertise with Slug. That's kind of what keeps us going. So we've been really lucky in that our scene, the scene that supports Slug, the scene that we support, it's thriving pretty well, and that we've been able to support each other, and we haven't really had to cut anything back. So our print readership is actually higher than our website readership.
And you could read the whole magazine technically online at slugmag.com.
Yeah, you can. You can read the whole magazine, and you can read. We have a bunch of exclusive stuff, exclusive interviews and photo galleries and show reviews that you won't see in the magazine. But yeah, when we do like a reader survey every year to kind of get a gauge of just what our readership is like, and people are typically reading the print version of Slug Magazine more than the online version, which is atypical of most publications right now.
I mean, I grew up on Slug, more or less. I mean, I picked up, I don't remember exactly how old I was. I was probably 17-ish, 35 now. I picked up the first Slug at Ranch, I believe, it was Ranch Records. It was in Sugar House. It was before they tore it down. It was also where I picked up my first ever, Maximum Rock and Roll, whole 9 yards. And so that's kind of where even once I want to lead into the next topic of, kind of like you say, people growing up on it. So I look forward to every month's Slug, just as I'm sure a bunch of other people. But you guys are having your 24th anniversary. It's called the Tattoo Parlor, the Slug Mag Tattoo Parlor, right? And
yeah.
What is it? Share a little bit about that, the date and the time. And
yeah. So we are really excited about this, and I mean, I'm not a marketing person at Slug, so I'm not like the best promoter. But I mean, I just think it's a really cool event. It's a really cool idea to have this pop-up tattoo parlor. It's going to be at the Salt Lake Photo Collective, February 16th from 8 to midnight. And we asked a bunch of different tattoo shops around town to design some Slug Flash, and we're going to be giving away tattoos, so people can show up and get Slug tattoos for free. I mean, you got to tip the artists.
And tip them good.
Yeah, tip them well. You're getting a free tattoo. But it's just a really, really cool idea. I don't think anything else like that has definitely been done in Salt Lake. But
I think it's great.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I for one, I'm planning on getting one, just because to me, my first thing is, well, Slug is my history.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what helped make my music interests and everything. And it's like, I shared it with a few friends, and they're like, "Why would you want to get Slug tattooed?"
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, why do you want to get any tattoo? It's part of who you are.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think that's why getting a Slug tattoo would be awesome.
Yeah, and I mean, the fact that they're free is appealing, but like you said, tattoos are like history. They are what makes you you, and I do think it's just a cool idea. I have like a couple of people at Slug have Slug tattoos that they paid for. Like Eric Granado, our distro manager, has a Slug tattoo. Mike Brown, our writer, ad salesperson, has a Slug tattoo. I mean, it's just...
Now I know you said you're not the marketing guy or anything,
Yeah.
but do you have any idea what the tattoo... I mean, is it just can you get any size? Or, I mean, I guess you probably don't know all those details.
I'm not sure, actually. As of right now, I know that the tattoo designs are supposed to be revealed pretty soon. Like I said, it's the beginning of January as we're talking. We're supposed to have those designs in the next couple weeks.
Yeah.
But... Yeah,
no, I'm just eager.
Oh yeah, I understand.
Where should I get it tattooed at?
I imagine they won't be that big, since people will be getting tattooed all night long.
Yeah,
so, yeah. I don't know where.
Do you expect? I mean, it's hard to know exactly how many people are going to turn out. Kind of like you said, it's the first thing.
Yeah.
First time it's been done.
Yeah.
I mean, what's been the response like?
People are stoked on it. I mean, our Facebook event page, I mean, that's not always the best gauge of how many people will show up, but I mean, a couple hundred people have RSVP'd, so I think we're going to have a pretty good turnout. I think people are going to be stoked on it. We try to do something really unique for our anniversary parties every year, and I think this is one of the coolest ideas we've ever had.
And it marks the 24 years of Slug.
Yeah.
Man. And that's really cool. You brought in one of your zines. Is it? This is one of your zines that you did. How long have you been doing zines as well, like your own? This is what's super cool and stuff. Is that?
Yeah, that's the name of my zine and the comics I make. I made so last year, 2010, from like the middle of July to the beginning of December, I made a comic every single day, and it just started when one day I couldn't sleep, so I was bored, so I made a comic. I always drawn. I always tried to make comics when I was younger. But this was the first time that I really was like, okay, whatever, I'll do it. And then I started showing them to people, so I decided to print zines and make them. But this is only the second zine I've ever actually made. I made another zine in 2010 at the University of Utah Book Arts program. They had a zine workshop, so I made one there. And I made another zine after this one, just as sketches and stuff like that. But yeah, Super Cool and Stuff is my zine. It's what I call my comics. It's actually from my friend Adam Dorbiala, who used to work in the Slug office. We used to trade Post-it notes in between our shifts, and he drew a dinosaur for me one day that said, "You're super cool and stuff." So I took the name from that.
Right on. So I'm assuming, when you're not busy working with Slug, I mean, you like to draw,
Yeah.
You like comics. I mean, what are some other hobbies and interests of Ricky's? To find out a little bit about Ricky here.
Well, music is the thing I've always really, really loved. That's what always drew me to Slug, and that's what I try to bring to Slug, is kind of my knowledge of music, and to kind of help people bring their knowledge out, and to kind of write really cool reviews, expose people to really cool bands, and just share music. But yeah.
Do you play in any local bands or anything?
No, never. I mean, I play Guitar Hero, but that's about as far as I go.
And air drums, you can't forget air drums.
Yeah.
I mean, who do you think? Okay, so you're exposed to music a lot. What are some of your favorite local bands, or what are some local bands that you feel don't get the recognition that they deserve? I mean,
yeah. So one band that I'm really stoked on, and a couple people at Slug are really right now, is Baby Ghosts. I interviewed them for our January issue.
Oh yeah,
they're this really, really cool pop punk band from Provo. They sound kind of like.
I think didn't you played a song of theirs on a recent Soundwaves from the Underground
we did.
podcast, actually.
Yeah, we did a year-end recap of kind of our favorite music, and Baby Ghosts were one of the bands. I just think they're a lot of fun. They're kind of stripped away from all of the pretension or the seriousness of that kind of, I mean, if you make music, you're making art, obviously you want to express yourself and you want people to connect with it, but sometimes art just has to be fun and silly and people can jump around and have a good time to it. And Baby Ghost, like their live show is what really won me over, and they're just a really rad band, and I could see them getting pretty big. They're putting out a new 7-inch with this label in, I believe it's Michigan, but yeah, they're really cool. I really like Dwellers. They actually signed to Small Stone Records, which I think is out of Texas, kind of really cool stoner rock kind of stuff. Who else is really cool?
Oh, even those two are
Yeah,
that's well, I mean, and I've said it before on the podcast, but I do not know what is up with Utah County lately.
Yeah,
putting out amazing music. The bands down there, I mean, there's so many of them.
Yeah, there's a ton
that are putting out. Tell me something about Ricky that listeners that know you or listener that they probably wouldn't expect.
Oh man,
a guilty pleasure or something that take people off guard a little.
Oh, I'll tell you how I got into punk rock, which is kind of led me to where I am right now. So I played a lot of video games when I was a kid, and I kind of mentioned that earlier. I was really into video games, and one of my favorite video games growing up was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater.
Nice.
And they had just this amazing soundtrack they had the first Tony Hawk, they had Goldfingers, Suicide Machines, kind of the more contemporary ska punk kind of stuff, but they also had Dead Kennedys. The next game had, I can't even remember, but I always loved those games.
All right, so let's try to figure out where we were at. We got interrupted slightly. We were talking about, you were talking about video games, kind of what got you into punk rock, something that people wouldn't expect.
I mean, I just think it's kind of, and I know that it is not a unique situation just from like reading stuff on the internet and people reminiscing about these old Tony Hawk games and their soundtracks, but yeah, it's where I discovered a lot of bands like Dead Kennedys, The Germs, The Adolescents, and even bands like who were more contemporary of the time, Bad Religion, Pennywise, and also this game called Crazy Taxi had a soundtrack by The Offspring and Bad Religion, which, maybe not the punkest bands in the world, but they resonated with me when I was 12, 13, and it just kind of, I have a bit of an obsessive personality, so when I get into something, I want to know everything about it, so...
I'm kind of the same way. I'm kind of the same way. It's kind of like, let's get in, and
I think that's really good for like someone who works on a podcast or I just think that's, I don't know. I just am so interested in the things I'm interested in. So when I heard cool music that I liked, I just dove into it. I got into the bands. I kind of, through the internet, I learned about punk rock. That led me to, read magazines about punk rock, like Punk Planet, which isn't around anymore, Maximum Rock and Roll.
I remember Punk Planet.
Yeah, Punk Planet was a really cool magazine. But yeah.
So that probably led you even into doing your own zines.
Yeah.
How many zines have you published?
Well, in terms of like actual zines, I still only have 3. I have a new one coming out in January, actually. It's just Super Cool and Stuff #2, which is more comics. I have all the content already. I just need to lay it out and do all that stuff. I've only done 3 actual zines, but I've been drawing since I was a kid. I've been making comics, and I tried to make a web comic when I was a little bit younger about me and my friends, and it just kind of stopped. So like me making zines right now, even though I'm 26 goddamn years old, I'm kind of late getting into it, but I mean...
No, I think it's great. I mean, there's still a part of me that's like, gosh, I need to make my way down to Kinko's and so actually, let's mention you have like a Blogspot page.
Yeah,
I think I've seen that post. Feel free. What is that? I mean, we can even put that on the.
Yeah, it's just rickygvigil.blogspot.com.
And what would people find if they went there?
There you will see. So the zines that I have put out so far, Super Cool and Stuff, they're like my favorite comics that I made. The first one has 20 comics in it. The second one that I'm gonna make, it also only has 20 comics. But for about a 5-month span, I made a comic every single day. Then after that, I made about 3 comics a week up until last May. So on that website, you will find all the comics I made in that time. You'll find a bunch of just random drawings. I went through a phase where I became reinterested in professional wrestling that I was into when I was a kid. So there's a bunch of silly drawings of old pro wrestlers. There's like concert flyers I've made, just all the kind of art kind of stuff that I make, if you can call my cartoony drawings art.
And are you self-taught with your art then, or did you take
in some
class?
ways? I mean, I always really liked to draw. It always was something I was really into. I was really into cartoons and comic books growing up, and then in high school is when I started taking my first classes and learning stuff like just figure drawing and like all of the real basics of drawing. And I took a couple of art classes in high school and a couple of art classes in college, but I kind of wish I would have pursued that more in college rather than English. I mean, I love my English degree, but like the drawing, that kind of stuff, I've been getting more and more into. And yeah.
You ever thought about doing a more journalistic type zine, just like with your writing?
I've thought about it.
Kind of a diary of Ricky or something like that.
Yeah.
Whether anybody's really, your first thought is, well, who wants to read about my life? Well, it's like, you never know.
Well, in some ways, that's what Super Cool and Stuff is. It's about
your life.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is exaggerated, or like towards the end of when I was making them a lot more regularly, and I'm going to start making them more regularly. That's kind of one of my goals for the new year. But it started to get kind of more surreal. Not really surreal, but like there's one where I wake up in a swimming pool full of chicken nuggets, and that didn't really happen in real life. But
could you imagine if it did, though? Right?
I would probably eat my way out of it, but yeah. I mean, and that is like when I got into comics. I mean, I grew up reading superhero comics and stuff, but when I got a little bit older, I got into more. This kind of relates to punk rock and kind of discovering that whole world. More indie comics, people who weren't writing about superheroes and writing more about themselves, and like just kind of the mundane. Like the second volume of my zine, Super Cool Stuff, is going to be called Tales of the Mundane and Mediocre. So it's just like stories from my life, but filtered through silliness.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's awesome. What was I going to? Oh, when you were growing up though, as a kid, I mean, we're kind of talking about as a kid. When everybody kind of has an idea of what they're going to be when they're a kid. What did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was really young, I mean, how young do you want to go? Do you want to be when I wanted to be an NBA player or a pro
I'm just
wrestler?
Curious. We were talking about our childhood for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up. I loved basketball. I wanted to be a basketball player. I'm so bad at basketball, so that was not an option. I wanted to be a pro wrestler, but I am not very competent physically. But yeah, when I grew up, I wanted to be a comic writer. I wanted to write not superhero comics, but more of and not even the alternative comics, the more
like Garfield or something.
Oh no, not even that. But like, I mean, when I did want to make a webcomic, that is kind of more like the gag kind of comics, and that's a bit of what I do now. But I wanted to write stuff like Preacher or Sandman or Hellblazer, like the stuff that isn't really superhero comics, but that's still rooted in like the sci-fi, geeky, nerdy world. That's what I really wanted to do when I was a teenager. Do
you still read a lot of comic books now?
I do, and I have actually been getting more into. I mean, I think that something that a lot of people who get into the quote-unquote underground culture do is shun more mainstream kind of things, even if that's something nerdy and not super mainstream like comic books. So I stayed away from superhero comics for a long time. But I'm getting more back into those and getting more into also exploring more indie comics and more artful kind of comics. But I think, I still read a lot of comics, and I've been getting into more different kinds of comics lately, not just because I enjoy them, but to kind of learn from them and to see the cool stuff that's happening out there and see if there's anything that can inspire me to do cool stuff.
Me personally, I'm not into comics, anything, but how yourself, it seems like you obviously have a history of comics. I've heard you can get comics like on a Kindle now or something. I mean, as a comic book lover, do you prefer them that way? Do you prefer them the hold 'em? I mean, I guess it's the same as a book.
Oh, yeah. I mean, well, with comics, there are a few different ways you can get them. Like you said, you can get them on a Kindle. You can get them on your phone. You can get like the single issues, or you can get the trade paperback versions, which are typically a little bit cheaper, but you have to wait a while. That's actually my preferred method is the trade paperbacks, just because you get more instant gratification. It's kind of like watching a TV series as it airs, episode by episode, week by week, versus getting it on DVD and watching it all in one weekend. So I like to read them just via trade paperbacks, the collected editions of the comics. I mean, you have to wait a little while, but...
And do you buy 2 of every comic book? Keep one in the plastic sleeve?
No, that's not me at all. I mean, when it comes to records, I am somewhat that way, but not very much.
Are you a vinyl collector?
Yeah, I am.
Nice, nice. I used to have a pretty intense vinyl collection, but it kind of got lost in my move from when I moved out to Pennsylvania from Salt Lake for a little while, and then moved back and kind of got lost in that. If you could have any superpower, what would you have? What would be your superpower?
Man. I don't know. I think a lot of people would say like flying or like X-ray vision or whatever. I would want something where I was just indestructible, kind of like Colossus from X-Men, where I had just a metal exoskeleton, just metal surrounding me. So like fucking cars could run into me or whatever, and I'd just be totally okay. I could jump from large heights and just kind of fall and be okay. I think that's what I'd do.
That's pretty cool. If you could witness any event, past or present or even future,
yeah,
what event would you want to witness?
That is a hard one. I mean, just growing up loving music, I've always kind of thought, oh man, I wish I could have seen this band or this band or this band. But like the one band I always think of that I'm like, man, it would have been amazing to see them would be The Clash, just because.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
It would be so cool.
Yeah.
Even like, and I know, I mean, Joe Strummer died like 10 years ago, and I think my boss at Slug, Angela Brown, actually saw one of the Joe Strummer and Mescalero shows.
Wow.
But yeah, even something like that would have been amazing, and I just never got the chance to see that, and that's just something I've always thought have been really, really cool.
What's your all-time favorite song?
Oh, that is so hard.
Or your all-time favorite record?
All-time favorite record? That's kind of a tough one, too. I mean, London Calling by The Clash is an easy choice. A record that has a lot of meaning for me is... Oh, I don't even know that. Let's see. A record I've listened to a lot over the last few years, and over the last year in particular is the 59 Sound by the Gaslight Anthem. Really cool band from New Jersey who kind of typified this East Coast, New Jersey, Bruce Springsteen-influenced, rock-influenced punk rock for a couple years. And yeah, it's just a really cool band, a band that I've traveled to Denver to see in the past, a band that I saw at Kilby Court, and then I saw them at Saltaire, so it was kind of like a band that I've kind of seen grow from something really small to something really big, and something that has helped me connect with a lot of people in my life. So, yeah.
Excellent. And kind of a last little thing here to kind of close it out, the last few questions. I'm going to kind of call it the last things, I guess you would say. What was the last book you read?
The last book I read, like a real book or a comic book?
Whatever you want to say, just your last book read.
Okay, well, the book that I haven't finished yet, I'm reading right now, is called Jimmy Corrigan, the Smartest Kid on the Earth, by this comic artist named Chris Ware, who does a few really, really cool things with like the conventions of comics. So one panel might be facing horizontally and one might be vertically, so you have to flip the book to kind of get the whole story, and he'll kind of put the title of the story in the middle of it, or he'll like just kind of play with the structure and replicate things, or kind of switch timelines like right in the middle of you. And it's not like a traditional like comic book. I mean, it is, but it's really weird. It's really artful. It's really, you don't know what's going on, but it's really interesting to read. So
cool.
Yeah.
What was the last movie you watched?
The last movie I watched was Brave, the Pixar movie.
Oh, nice. Last CD that you bought?
The last CD I bought? I have no idea. The last record I bought, though, is...
The last record?
Yeah. The last record I bought was it's a split by a couple local bands. I bought it at Ranch. Sure Sign to the Nail and Settle Down.
Nice. And what was the last website you visited?
I just checked Facebook on my phone a few minutes ago.
Oh, nice.
And before that, I checked Google to find out how to come here.
Oh, cool. And the last restaurant you ate at?
I ate at Este on Friday night with some of my friends.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. And what do you think Salt Lake what do you think Salt Lake City's biggest secret is? Biggest hidden secret.
I think Salt Lake City is its own biggest hidden secret. I mean, we were talking about it before this and during this. It's just that I think even people in Salt Lake and people in Utah aren't aware of this culture that exists of all these people doing all these cool things. Like, there is a culture here that people just aren't aware of. People think that there's such a predominant ruling force. That might not be a good way to phrase it, but people...
Yeah, no, I think we all know what you mean.
Yeah, definitely. I just think people don't know that there's all this art, there's all this music, there are all these really cool stores, there are all these really cool people doing really cool things, and a lot of these people are doing a lot of the same things at the same time. Like, everyone at Slug kind of has their own thing that they do outside of Slug. Like my friend Alex is in a band called Filth Lords. Our managing editor, Astaire, puts on a lot of cycling events. Gavin, our office coordinator, does his own blog, kind of in the same vein as Slug or as this podcast. There's just like everyone does so many things in Salt Lake just to.
Do you notice that though? I mean, I noticed that in Salt Lake, it's like people in this city, we love to create.
Yeah. I
And
definitely think that's true.
It's awesome. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's that way in other cities. I've lived in a couple other places.
It might be. But again, I mean, I haven't lived in other cities, but like just hearing other people say there's not really a culture like this in very many places, and it's pretty special. And it is really cool to see people create and people just try to create. It's really inspirational to kind of make you want to go do your own thing, this thing that you want to do that you think you might not be able to do, but fuck it, just go for it. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Ricky. Well, I appreciate you coming on again. Slugmag.com. Soundwaves from the Underground. Is that linked on there? What's the website link for that again?
Just go to slugmag.com and you can click a link at the top for the podcast.
Okay, and then the magazine, I mean, you could pretty much pick that up, like you guys say, anywhere cool.
Yeah.
And then your website, rickyvigil.blogspot.com.
You got it.
And anything else you want to plug? I mean, the 16th of February, the tattoo thing.
Yeah.
And I'm sure information about that's on the website.
Yeah, it's at slugmag.com if you want to look there. It's also on Facebook. I also am going to have a little bit of art at a show at the Guthrie Building on February 15th, the day before the anniversary party. And
now, who are you doing that with? Because I think I'm actually going to have them on the podcast
later
on in January as well.
Yeah, Rihanna is setting it up. Yeah, she's really cool. I've only met her once, but she approached me on Twitter and said she liked my comics, and I met up with her at the garage during the Slug Christmas party, actually. And she invited me to do some stuff in this art show, and she's putting on another one the next week. I believe it's the 22nd at the Metro Bar with AFLA. Have you talked to those guys yet?
I haven't, no. But
Yeah.
let's,
Yeah, but yeah, it goes, it's kind of a benefit for them, the art is for local agriculture. So yeah, I should have some art in those shows.
And that's February 15th.
February 15th at the Guthrie Building, then February 22nd at the Metro, and then February 16th is the Slug.
And how can people find out? Is there a website or anything how to find out more about those? Or
not that I'm aware of. I know that Rihanna is working hard to set some stuff up. And
so when later on, I mean, you obviously this podcast will probably be posted obviously before hers.
Yeah.
So try to find her podcast episode because I'm sure that will list
that will,
the website.
She will have more info about that than I will. So.
Yeah. Well, excellent.
Yeah.
So have you done quite a few art shows then?
No, this is actually going to be my very first one.
Oh, excellent.
So yeah, it should be interesting. I don't even know what I'm going to do. I have like a couple of posters I made for shows, but I'll probably try to make some cool new stuff. So yeah.
Excellent. All right, Ricky. Well, anything else you want to mention before we close out tonight?
No.
I seriously want to thank you so much for, I know this is the last thing you want to be probably doing, you know, and
that's not true at
staying
all.
at home in your PJs. and
No, it's been a lot of fun. I appreciate it a lot.
Absolutely. You know, myself, I'm very, always interested in what other people are doing around Salt Lake and find out their story and what they're doing. And I appreciate you coming on the podcast today.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Chris.
All right. Thank you so much, Ricky, for sitting down with me and sharing me your story of how you got involved with Slug, as well as some of your other projects that you are up to. Again, check him out or check the links out to get in touch with Ricky or Slug Magazine at iamsaltlake.com/episode 35. It's going to get you in touch with him as well as Slug. Support them. They're both really big assets to Salt Lake City and just really cool in general. So, yeah, like I mentioned in a few previous episodes, there's a lot of new things I kind of want to try as we continue with this podcast into 2013. First thing I want to do is I want to kind of just do a little really quick review on an app that you can download for your iPhone. Some friends of mine over at Sand Mountain Studios, they're a local Salt Lake City app developers here in the area. They sent me this link to download this Travelgram. It's an app that you can download right now. It's just for your iPhone. But you download it onto your iPhone just like any other camera app, and you download it and you take a picture, and it's got all the different filters. But what's cool about this one is you put a couple different fonts. You can put what city or it automatically puts what city that you took the photo in. So now, granted, all the pictures that I take with it, it shows Salt Lake City. Just a really cool, different feature that I haven't really seen in any camera apps yet, but it's a really nice feature. You can also timestamp it if you want. Again, you don't have to add those, the city or the timestamp. That's just kind of what the app's about, though. The only thing I didn't like about the app, however, is the fact that you can't go into your previous photo library. Any pictures that you've taken in the past, you can't go in there and add it in. So what I would do is just suggest to do is just go on over to travelgramapp.com, check them out, download the app. Again, it's just for your iPhone right now. I don't know if they're going to release it for any of your Android listeners or not, but check them out. It's a really fun app. Right now it's free, so I don't know if that's going to be forever or not, but I would grab it while you can. And it's, again, check it out for your iPhone. Yeah, so I'm going to close out today's episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast with a song by Baby Ghost. They're a local band from the area. The song I'm going to play is called Birds Baby. Baby Ghosts. Hopefully I'll have them on a future episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast. Again, our voicemail line is 385-202-5926. Tell me what you think of it. Give me some feedback. Love to hear back from my listeners. Also, email me, iamsaltlake@gmail.com. I'd love to have you on a guest on the show. I'd love to bring you on and share your story with the rest of Salt Lake City. Thank you very much for your support. This is Baby Ghosts, Birds Baby. You guys have a great night.
She's got you shitty.